Hey, welcome back to X-tricated. I am DDB and together with my partner in crime, or as he wants to say it, let me not even say it, let him be the one to say it. My partner in crime, KB. How are you?
I'm fine. Good morning.
Good
How are
morning.
you today?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good, man. So,
You, you know that I take reservation to that word, but that phrase "partner in crime." I
what
am a
is
partner in
is
crime.
just an
I want a
expression?
partner in good things.
It's just an expression, bro. It's just an expression. How have you been
We
now?
don't we don't need to crime whether it's expression or literal.
How have you been?
Yeah, I'm been good. How about you?
I'm well. I just
How's
saw.
it been better?
Everything is fine, man. Everything is good. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So everyone, welcome back to the third and last episode of this series, The Economic Machine. And I would love KB to actually give us a quick recap of what we've done so far, so that we can continue. Yeah.
Thank you. So, like you said already, this is the third episode, or the third and last episode of this series. When we started the series, we talked about economics and economy, basically, how they are different, how those two words are different. And then we went on to start discussing about the economic machine. We stated that to understand a machine, you have to understand its parts. A machine is complex. So before you can understand how a machine works, you have to understand how each part within it, each component works. You understand? So that is why we did this series. So we started out by talking about transactions, basically how human beings interact with each other, basically with their money being exchanged for goods and services. You understand? And how transactions for a particular good or service forms a market in that particular aspect. We also talked about credit and how it impacts the economy. Then we went on to discuss in the second episode about productivity growth and short-term debt cycle. We talked about how if you don't rely on credit at all, when you are thinking about your economic growth, you are going to be thinking about what you are going to do to improve your productivity, to improve your output. That's all you are going to all your economy is going to be dependent on. You understand? So your economy is going to grow much slower, but it is better in the long term. Then, if you depend on credits for your economic growth, basically, it's going to be faster. But over the long term, you are going to be experiencing some things. When we talk about that, we saw that we stated that productivity growth is a linear growth. As long as you can keep increasing your productivity, you're going to experience positive growth every single time. But when we talked about short-term debt cycle, you understand, we are dealing with credit, we are dealing with debt now. So why we call it a cycle is because there is always a high point and there's a low point. You know, if you borrow today, you have more money than you've earned to spend. But when you're going to pay back, you're going to have less money. You're going to be able to spend less money than you've earned because now you have to pay back your debt. So it's basically like an ebb and flow. You're going to have a high point. You're going to have a low point. That's why it's a cycle. So we talked about how a short-term debt cycle is usually like looked at over a period of between 5 to 8 years. Then today we are going to talk about long-term debt cycle and how it leads to something we call deleveraging. Um, over a long period of time, if you look at all the debts being accumulated, they are looking at it in form of the short-term debt cycle. If you keep on adding them up, you're going to have what we call the long-term debt cycle.
Yeah. So, as KB just mentioned, right? We mentioned in the previous episode where the more people borrow, the more they have more income, right? To either buy assets or to spend, right? So, the more they spend, the more they borrow, the more money is in the economy. So, the economy gets a huge rise and there's an economic boom. But what people are not realizing is that the more there's income, which means people are borrowing fast, which means debt is increasing faster. So the more income increases, the more debt increases higher. So after like the period of that 5 to 7, 80 years that the short-term debt cycle is, when people start repaying their debts, and then after a while the central bank come and lower interest rate, and then people now start borrowing again. Remember, people did not completely pay their debt and they started reborrowing again, right? So that then creates that kind of an accumulated amount of debt over time. You understand? With more borrowing comes more debt. You understand? So after each cycle, there's an increase of income, yes, but at the same time, there's also an increase of debt, right? So despite people being more indebted, right, lenders keep giving credit. I still don't understand why that happens. I don't know why lenders always do that, as if they don't understand what economics is all about, right?
They are seeing more money in circulation now. Well, not technically not money, but then all the money that we think that we are seeing is usually credit. Actually, the
exactly.
money that
Yeah, because everyone,
they see apparent economic progress, so they are more inclined to give credit.
Yes, because they think as if that person that is going to borrow has credit, is credit worthy. They don't even know that the credit worthiness comes because that person borrowed to actually buy the asset. So
it's not a bad thing as long as you are buying assets, right?
Yeah, that's not actually a bad thing. So yes, like
I'll just give an example. Like I was discussing the other day. Basically, someone I'm close to, he used to work for a company that had a housing scheme for its staff.
Yeah.
So at a point, the company wanted to sell off the houses basically to the staff. So maybe they just wanted the money, or they just didn't want to manage the housing estate anymore. So they decided that, we can give you this. So at that point, he had already saved up some money which he wanted to use to buy a land somewhere. So he decided, since this house is now available to me, I probably don't need to buy that land again to start thinking of building my own house, So he decided that, maybe he should use that money and just pay off for the house. Then it now struck him. He said, why would I just carry the money that I've saved and just give it to these people when I can just borrow, take a house loan and pay them off? Then I can use this money and buy the land that I want to buy, then still pay off the loan little by little. And that was what he did. He decided to take that loan, took the house loan, he paid off for the house from the company, and then he decided now that he was going to use that money and to buy another asset, which was the land. So as at the time, that was like 2.8 million naira. So he used part of the money to buy a land, he developed it a little bit. He was even able to, he ended up not even using the land, land, he just built it to foundation level, but he ended up reselling for about 5 million.
Okay.
Then the house that he used that loan to pay off, it was sold for around 2 million to around that time. It was basically subsidized. Today, the value of that house is over 60 million naira if once you sell the house.
That's
so
smart.
you can just see how it's it basically gave, and he was able to pay off the debts without problem. It was paying every month, and within a year he was able to clear off the debts. So he took a debt, and he had already created another asset somewhere. So you might think that, some people may think maybe a debt is a liability every single time, but it's not really.
Yeah, it can be assets.
It depends on what you are using it for. So that's what some people use the credits that they've gotten for, and that is why you experience a lot of economic growth where there's credit available. You understand?
Yes.
That's one reason why some lenders will keep on lending, because they see that the money that they are being that they are giving out is being used to like develop, drive asset prices up, all those type of things. Yeah. So they are more inclined to give that debt. Even though people are more inclined to borrow, the lenders are more inclined to give credits too.
Yeah, that's true. And apart from the assets asset values going up, right, incomes are also going to increase, right? The stock market is going to also increase because asset values are increasing, incomes are increasing. Like there's a bubble, right? Like you understand, it pays to buy goods, services, and financial assets because at this moment everything is actually going up, right? And at this point, as economists want to call it, they call that period a bubble because everything is going well. You understand? So even the debts have been growing, incomes have been growing nearly as fast to offset the debt that is already there, right? But then, so there's something called debt burden, right? The ratio of debt to income is equals to debt burden, right? So long as income continues to rise, debt is manageable, right? At the same time, asset value so high, keep rising high, and guess what? People borrow a lot of money to buy these assets as investments, making the asset price to rise even higher because they are in high demand. So this makes borrowers credit worthy for a long time, just as Kabiru just mentioned with his example, right? Though, but this cannot continue forever, KB, because over decades, as we mentioned, right, and multiple cycles of short-term debt cycle, right, the accumulated debt is higher than the accumulated income, as I mentioned earlier, right? So so after decades now, after those cycles of 5 to 8 years, let's say 4, 5, 6 cycles, right, the debt has already accumulated to a point where the repayment will start becoming faster. Debt repayment is going to start becoming faster than incomes, right? Forcing people to cut back on spending, right? Since one person's spending is another person's incomes begin to drop, making people less credit worthy, and the borrowing goes down. That also affects debt repayment because debt repayment continues to rise because people want to pay more now because they want to pay back their debt, right? And spending drops even further than before. The cycle reverses itself on a big scale, and at that point it is called the long-term debt peak. At this point, nobody wants to collect debt, nobody wants to borrow, nobody wants to lend, nobody wants to borrow, right? At that point, it's like that's the highest that the debt can be. So there's only one way, and it has to be down, right? And that's what is called a deleveraging. The economy starts crashing down, right? And this has happened through history. In 2008 of recent, 1989 in Japan, and 1929 in US during Hitler's ascension to power. In Europe it happened, not just in US but in Europe too, in the 1930s, right?
The big depression.
That was what happened. And even recently, in the 2010s, right, in Spain, if I'm not mistaken, it happened too. So this is what we call deleveraging. Everything is coming down, like the debt repayment is becoming higher because the debt is higher, so it has to reduce. You understand? So that's what a deleveraging happens. And during this period, right, people start cut their spending, incomes fall, credit disappears because nobody wants to borrow, and lenders do not want to also lend back. And incomes fall, debt repayment rise, borrowers get squeezed, a lot of things happen. The stock market collapse, real estate tanks, bank gets into trouble because asset prices drops, right? The value of the collateral that borrowers can put up now drops, right? Like me, because everybody wants more money and they want to pay their debts back, what will happen is that everybody wants to go and sell. There's no money to borrow, so people that have assets are going to fall to their assets and they're going to go and sell them. So in the rush to go and sell to get money to repay your debt, the prices are going to go down because, as we said, law of supply and demand says that the more there is a supply of something, the demand is going to be lower and the price is going to go down, right? The more, and that's how asset value will drop, and then the value of the collateral for the borrower that borrowed money is going to drop too, so making borrowers even less credit worthy. Right now, people feel poor during that period and credit disappears, and it gets worse. Less spending happens, less income, less wealth, less credit, less borrowing. So this thing keeps going, and this is called deleveraging, right? Now, interest rates in a recession, right? There's a difference between a recession and a deleveraging, right? In a recession, lowering interest rates helps stimulate borrowing. However, in a deleveraging, right, lowering interest rate does not work because interest rates are already low, so there's no stimulation whatsoever. Interest rate hits
You're
0%.
basically going to bring it down to zero.
Exactly, you've already brought it down to zero because of all these things that have been happening, and you cannot bring it down again, right? So in a deleveraging, borrowers debt burden is too much. The ratio of their income to their debt is too much, right? That they can't be trusted by lenders anymore. And as I said, borrowers stop borrowing because them too, they are suffocated. They don't even borrow because it's too much, right? And lending will stop lending, right? So now the question is, how do we solve the leveraging? Because this is now like we are at the rock bottom of the economic cycle, right? Just because of debt.
Yeah, this deleveraging thing, if it's not handled perfectly or close to perfectly, some economies will not even be able to recover. Like when we look at the most recent, that's the global economic meltdown of 2008. There are still countries till today that haven't recovered. They are still. So there are actually like four steps to dealing with deleveraging. There are 4 different steps. 3 of them are they are what we describe as painful and deflationary, meaning that by the time these policies or methods set in, a lot of people are going to be squeezed. They are going to feel it. They are going to feel hardship. You understand? While the last one is described as inflationary and stimulative, in that when it is done, people will see a lot of money flowing, but if you're not careful, you think falsely that the economy is back to normal. So these 4 steps are: first of all, you're going to cut spending. Secondly, reduce debt. Third, you're going to redistribute wealth. And 4, that's where central bank comes in. You print money, basically. So we start by cutting spending. So generally, if you're in debt, like I've already mentioned, especially if you think about the short-term debt cycle, for example, if you look at one individual that's borrowed money and he buys a lot of things, when the time comes for him to pay, he's not going to spend as much as he was spending when he had collected the debt, you understand, the credit. He's spend less. He has to cut spending. So it's not just at the level, it's not just at the high level, even at the lowest level, at our own level, that is how we are going to do things. If economy becomes too hard, let's say the things that you used to buy, the luxury that you could afford before, you would probably cut back on it till a better time comes. So not just people do this, businesses will also do this. Businesses will try to cut their costs, and in the process of cutting costs, you see that some businesses will lay off employees. 2008, again, I give another example. So many people lost their jobs in 2008, especially in the
Another experience of that was in 2020 during the pandemic, when a lot of jobs were actually lost, and then there was high unemployment ratio.
So economic hardship that affects usually everybody. Then also the government too would have to cut back on spending. If you are spending on things that might be considered frivolities, you're going to have to cut back on them. If not, you're going to run into deficits in your budget unnecessarily. So let's say you are spending a lot of money on military projects when you're not currently at war with anybody, or you don't see any threat in the foreseeable future. Instead of trying to invest in some other things that might improve your economy or might improve the living status of your people, So all these type of things, when you think about it, like, okay, let me cut back on this because we are no longer in good times, so we cannot afford to be spending this way. So that is the first one. So if you are going to cut back, spending, remember I said that the first 3 steps are painful. They are painful and deflationary. So if you think about it already, people at the level of people now, at the level of the individuals, those things that you liked to do, that you enjoyed so much, you're not going to be able to do them again because you do not have enough money to do that. You understand? Because you
Yeah.
have to be paid, you have to pay off debts. You understand?
Yeah, but let me
If
add,
you're
let me also add to that, KB. So borrowers during that period, like borrowers realize they cannot pay their debt, right? And if you remember, like debts are assets to lenders, but now the assets now isn't even valuable anymore, right? So the collateral is not even of use to any lender at the moment because borrowers cannot use it to pay back their debt. So people now go back to their banks to withdraw money. Now that's people that did not even borrow money. I mean people that have their money in the bank, right? Because you remember, it's the money that is in the bank that we as normal citizens go and save money or put our money in the bank, that these banks use to lend the money, right? So it squeezes the bank because they don't have the money to pay back, and they'll start giving all sorts of excuses, right? And guess what? All parties are now forced to default on their debts, right? And at this point, this is called a depression, right? This is called a depression, and then that's where we'll transition now into the second one, reduction, because everybody is now squeezed. Now everybody now find a way to reduce debts. And I think
exactly. This what you've just said now is going to bring us to the second solution, or the second step in solving the leveraging, basically. Because when when the depression sets in, like they say, that is when you will now realize that most of the money that you think that you had was not really there.
Exactly.
You understand? It's just like how you started. When we started last week's episode, you made mention of something that you were reading about when you realized that I've forgotten what you really said actually, but then you said the majority of the money the entire world.
Yes, majority of the money is basically credit.
The world is indebted right now.
Yes. So whatever money that is in circulation right now is basically debt, right?
Yes.
It's basically credit that was borrowed.
Yeah, you may not really feel it right now, but then at some time in the future, it's inevitable.
You're going to feel it.
You're going to see that, okay, this is the reality. You understand? The wealth that you thought you had is not really there. Money is just money is imaginary. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that brings us to what you said brings us to the second one, reduction of debt. When banks are the biggest lenders, basically. What happens is that when you deposit your money in the bank, the bank sees your money to do business, basically. Other people will come to take loans, basically. So they sign agreements, bring collaterals, this and that. So in the event that a person cannot pay back, you understand, the collateral gets taken, then gets sold, money comes back, everything's like is asset now, isn't it? So you're going to make back that you lent one way or the other. So the people who originally have that money, you understand, are going to be able to get their money back when they need it. You understand? So that's basically, it's like a cycle. So if anything, like if we get to a situation like this now where people are no longer able to repay their debt,
and the asset and that period, the asset is not even valuable at all. So how can we then create a solution where both parties can go? Because to be honest, bank can never ever go with, it's better they go with less of everything or none at all. They cannot just go empty-handed. They have to take something away from you, right? I think
like you mentioned that time, like asset prices have reduced, and you also mentioned real estate. Most of the assets that people use as collateral, they have real estate. So when real estate prices have dropped, because due to the economic downturn, you will not expect the collaterals to have value. So now that the banks are lenders, but also that there are also debtors because they are indebted to you, their customers, basically, because it's your money basically that is into the business. If people now come and start, let's say, okay, I also owe debts, and I want to come and withdraw money to go and pay back somewhere, you understand? And so many people are also doing the same at that time. They're basically going to squeeze the bank. The bank might not have that money to give you. That's why you see that some banks will just like fold up, basically. They are not able to, they even declare bankruptcy, so they will not be able to meet up with the demands. So one way or the other, you just have to recover something. So that's why you have to first you have to think of how you are going to reduce the debt. So So there are different ways you can reduce the debt. You can actually, lowering interest rates is no longer an option because the interest are already like probably very very low at that point. You understand? So you cannot say you're going to lower the interest rate again, except you want to put zero interest. Then another thing you can do is to stretch out the time. The time that you are going to allow for that debt.
More like increase the period of time, the time period of payment, huh?
Yes. So if you are meant to pay that debt back pay the loan back within 2 years or 1 year, let's say, they can stretch the time out maybe a year and 6 months or 2 years, stop something like that.
Or even long term, if things are worse, they even make it long term, maybe 5, 6, 8, 10 years, depending on how much.
Yes, exactly. That way, the debt burden gets reduced. You understand? You don't have to pay so much at once. You understand? When you are not even making as much money at that point, because everybody has cut back on spending, and like you said, one man's spending is another man's income, isn't it? You understand? So all those things prevent. They are going to like you said, David. The banks would rather have something rather than nothing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like bread is better than none, right? So you just get what you can get back at that particular point. You don't most of them wouldn't think about forcing something that is not there, basically.
Yeah,
but then so in a case where it's not managed, people don't really think about reduction of debt like that. So basically, you do what all this was called debt restructuring. You have to restructure the debt so that people can be able to pay back, and the banks can be able to still try to stay afloat. This brings us to our third step.
Well, before we go to the third step, right? How this is worse, because you remember when KB mentioned that it's deflationary. What happens there is that even though that reduces the debt, right, it reduces debt burden, as he mentioned, right? Now, the whole process of debt reduction makes assets to become even less valuable, making incomes to reduce even further, because if you reduce debt, you're actually reducing the value of certain assets, and that happens to the entire economy.
Yes, exactly. And with even the debt reduction, right, you are not going to be able, if you're a lender, if you reduce debt, already we know that it's going to be hard to even lend at this point. But still, maybe there might be looking for it, but you will not be able to give them just because you have not yet been giving back the ones that are being owed to you. You understand? Yeah. So you will not be willing to give out at that point. The entire economy, let's say the entire economy now is not credit worthy, basically. To you, the risk is just too high at that point. So you're not going to be willing to give out credit at that point again. So we talked about cutting of spending earlier. So when this happens, actually, I mentioned that businesses might lay off staff. You understand? And these same businesses that are laying off staff, they're also not how will I put it? They're also basically in the red. So they are not running optimally. Basically, when you talk about making profits, and also sometimes there will be need for the government to give stimulus packages to those companies to ensure that they are still running. In 2020, when this COVID stuff was happening, in the US, for example, you will see that Donald Trump actually gave some boosters to some companies, to help them stay afloat. Some of the big companies to help them stay afloat. Also, you have people becoming unemployed due to the fact that those businesses that were giving boosters, they might have already laid off staff. You understand? So now you have more unemployed people in the in your country, basically. So how are you going to take? They are going to put pressure on you, like, government, please do something. Then you also try to design a separate stimulus package now for the unemployed. As we are in some countries. Also, during the 2020 lockdown, because of coronavirus, you could see that in some countries like Canada, in the US, and some other countries, citizens were given stimulus packages.
In Nigeria, it was palliatives.
Yeah, basically anything to like and we don't really know, we can't really say the effectiveness of that one.
Exactly, but that was their
But
own version of stimulus to some.
either way, yes. Either way, it is a means to enable people survive the
Yes,
times.
yeah,
Either you can either assist monetarily, or you assist with basically what you think are the basic needs of people at that point. You understand? So basically, now the government is trying to provide for the people, and also trying to provide for businesses too, so that they don't, because the businesses are the backbone of your nation's economy. You understand? If they do not, if the all of them start folding up one by one, and you're not doing anything, you're not going to be able to save the economy as fast. You understand? So you actually have to help them out, as you're also helping the individuals too. So as you're doing all that, remember, there's no money that you're getting. The money that you're getting from taxes is no longer there, because people are no longer earning that much. So what are you going to tax? What are you taxing? You understand? So you are going to be running in deficits. You're going to be running a budget deficit. You are spending more money than you are making.
Yeah, in taxes.
So how are you going to make back down? You are going to think of how you are going to increase taxes, isn't it? But you cannot increase taxes on the people that just lost their jobs now. You understand? So this next step now, the redistribution of wealth, what happens? You are going to increase taxes on the rich people.
Yes.
So you know that the wealth of the world basically is held by like 1% of the people. You understand? Some places have even less than 1%.
Yeah.
So those people, you now decide that, okay, you're going to raise your taxes on them, and just as much as you as a regular guy you hate taxes, the rich people also hate taxes too. Because the more money you make, the more money you pay in taxes. That's why many people evading taxes using offshore companies and all those type of things. The richest man in your country does it. So many.
Basically, every country actually does that right now, because if you see big companies like Google and all that, they have offshore companies in, let's say, is it in those Caribbean islands where the taxes are even next to zero, even 0%, right?
Okay, yeah, so that's an example. These places are even called tax havens. You understand?
Yes.
So these rich people, like, they use that to like avoid the heavy taxes that that they are due, or that they are required to pay rather. So the government now has no other alternative than to raise the taxes on the rich, because they are the ones that can afford to pay. Technically, because they are also being squeezed by the economic downturn. Remember, because the asset prices, all the assets that they own, the asset prices are being reduced. You understand? Maybe they may be landlords, they may be whatever, they may own different real estate properties. You understand? But those things are no longer increasing in value. Selling at a good price, so their net worth basically is low at that point. But the regular guys that are now basically poor, you are looking at those guys, you are looking at them as, oh, these people are not even experiencing the issue. When the government taxes them to help, to help give stimulus packages to both the businesses and to the individual.
Unemployed people.
Those the unemployed now. Those unemployed, those obviously, whatever stimulus package you are going to be receiving is not going to be, it's not a substitute to it. So you're still going to be looking at like, these people are not experiencing the problems. But then the rich people too are now looking at those unemployed individuals like, why do I have to pay for these guys? You understand?
And then social tension, social disorder happens.
I am losing money there and there, and I'm being taxed heavily, so that I can pay, so that government can pay these guys, for doing nothing basically. Sometimes that is what might be, so basically the rich he resents the poor will resent the rich. You understand? There's jealousy from the poor to the rich, and why the rich hates the poor. You understand? So if you do not manage that properly, it can lead to social unrest. Understand? It can even lead to anarchy if care is not taken. Basically, if like I said, 1% owns more wealth. So the strength in numbers, isn't it? If anything should occur, if any bad thing should happen, societal collapse should happen at that point, you will see the 99% of unemployed people. The next step, that's the last step now, like which I described as being inflationary and stimulative, is where the central bank comes in. So what happens in this step basically is central bank printing money. What the central bank does is that they print the money, but then they start buying assets. You understand? These assets that were low value before. When people start seeing that things are being bought, those things start driving the prices up. Like, oh, okay, it's like this thing has value. This one is coming to buy.
It's more like they are creating the demand.
Value. Yeah, you understand.
They will create the demand.
A very good example of something like this can even relate it to cryptocurrency trading. You understand? When people start buying a certain cryptocurrency, maybe a token or this thing, you see that the price starts going up because the demand is now higher. You understand? People are saying that, oh, people are buying this coin. They want to ape in. You understand? So they go to buy. You understand? And they keep on driving the prices up. Then when people start selling, you understand? People see that they've started selling, they will start, they will sell. So that's how the prices come down. So stuff like that. So when you see people selling in this kind of economic hardship, a lot of people are selling their assets, you understand? And that was what was driving down the value driving the value of the assets down. But when the CBN comes in and they're like, okay, I feel like I want to buy these your assets at a price that was even higher than what people thought was the valuation. You understand? People will now say, is this thing that valuable? Let me go and buy others that are like it. You understand?
And before you know it, I said before you know it, like the prices now go up.
People that might have had money saved, for rainy day in quotes, they might go and they, say, okay, I think this is a good time now to enter back into the market, and they go and buy let's say a house. You understand? As the asset prices are going, they are now going to benefit from selling it in future. So aside from that, the central bank can also buy government bonds, basically. So they're essentially borrowing money to the central government, isn't it? So now the government has more money to spend on those stimulative programs, stimulus packages that they were giving both the unemployed citizens and the companies that were on the verge of folding up. You understand? So now you have more money, flowing into the economy, driving things. People now have a little bit more money to spend. You have income has increased. Maybe then also spending will increase. Debt repayment will also, like you are basically balancing debt repayment now with income at that point. So they will be able to pay off their debts more easily. And
it's more like if you do it in a very good way, as KB mentioned earlier, it's more like a reset. It's more like we're starting afresh.
Yes. In the 2008 global economic meltdown, USA, it was reported that USA, they printed $2 trillion. That's the Federal Reserve of USA.
I think it's
that's
over.
Their bank.
Is it over 2.8 trillion? Over 2.8 trillion, if I'm not mistaken.
So more than 2 trillion. Let's even say $3 trillion. During that, to help boost the economy. Some people, they actually think that printing money is bad. But it's not necessarily bad if you're actually using it to boost your economy. Sometimes people, some countries, they go for the printing of money when they've not done either of the first three steps.
Exactly. Yeah.
They go straight to printing money, and then they think that that's the final solution to everything. But what they'll end up doing is to create inflation, more inflation, when people don't even have that money don't really have the money to spend yet. You understand? But just because they are printing more money now, people are going to see money in circulation now. They may have belief that things are fine now, money is flowing, we can do as we like. Those kind of things, and that is very dangerous for your economy. It will further drive your economy down if you do not take care. That is why you actually have to first of all take those first three steps before you now start thinking of printing money. But as you're taking those first three steps, you make sure not to linger on them for too long. Like I said, especially when we talked about that third step, we talked about social unrest.
If you allow it to take long, if you take a lot of time, trust me, there's going to be anarchy, and apart from that, there's going to be conflict between countries self, not even in the country. In the country, there's going to be unrest, right? There's going to be more like a civil war, civil unrest, and all that. Then there's going to be an unrest between countries that borrow the money and countries that lend the money. You get, so that's where issues are going to happen, and then you see economic war will happen, and then before you know it, you have a full-blown war.
Yes, that is true. And just like you mentioned Hitler earlier. It was during the time of the Great Depression. That is actually what Hitler rode into power. Basically, Europe was in shambles. Let me put it that way. That Europe was just recovering from a world war at that time. You understand?
Yeah.
So, and an economic collapse. It's a very good time. It's a very good time for you to just come in with I am the savior. You understand? You just roll in. You want to stop social unrest, isn't it? You roll into power. Everybody will celebrate you. As you're coming in.
Yeah.
So those type of things happen.
So
ladies, if you are able to balance all this, if you're able to balance all these 4 steps, you're going to have a beautiful deleveraging. You are going to have an economic reset, like David said. So you're not going to be in that situation forever, but it actually takes time. It takes time to do all this. So
it takes 1 to 2 years for you to actually have all those 4, like 1 to 2 years before you can like fully have like an economic reset. Yeah. So ladies and gentlemen, this is basically the end of our series, and to be honest, between me and KB, we've learned lessons that through this whole series, we've learned lessons about personal finance, basically personal finance and personal productivity, growth, and all that, right? And there are 3 lessons that we learned, right, that we're very happy to share with you guys. Number 1 of them is, first of all, right, in all you do, right, do all you can to raise your productivity level at all times, basically every day, right? So that's something we learned as individuals. Then the second thing, make sure that your incomes don't rise faster than your productivity. Oh my God. As Nigerians, we have this thought process of making money quickly. We are not patient enough to actually occupy and build something and make the money at the same time. We're not saying that you should not make money. Make money, make income fast, right? But at the same time, as you're doing that, make sure that your productivity is increasing too, so that you can actually merge the amount of money and make sure, because without productivity, you won't be able, as your incomes rise faster, you won't be able to use that money well. You understand?
Yes.
And
let me even jump in with an example. You can take example from people like Elon Musk or other serial entrepreneurs. They make money. Let's say like those guys that sold Paystack now. They sold, it was a lot of money that they got paid for it. $200 million for that, $1 million. They got paid for it. So you may not expect that those guys are just going to go and sit down. They are probably going to do something again.
Yeah, exactly.
You understand? You made a lot of money that they probably will not need to work again in their lives, but they know that they just don't have to. They just cannot sit down like that. So they're just going to go ahead, do something more. Elon Musk, before he became what we know him as today, he had created a lot of things. He had created companies, sold them, made money, gone ahead, created more companies like that. Then he kept on accumulating wealth, and that was it. So if you're allowing your income to rise faster than your productivity, what happens is that you basically become complacent. You're not going to be competitive anymore in the economy,
because you won't be able to even manage that particular income that comes to you at the end of the day. So at the end of the day, you just make the income, and then how many companies have we seen that they make a lot of money, and then during an economic deleveraging, or even not even deleveraging, most of them, but just even when things are even bad, just a simple recession, you just see companies just die off. Why? Because yes, they went faster, they increased, but then they did not improve their productivity as a company, and they just died. They went extinct. A lot of companies went extinct in 2008. only companies that really improve their productivity during that period or before that period were able to stay alive, right? So, and if you can even look at it, right, deleveraging is a way of filtering the good and the bad economies in the world. So trust me, right, during what's it called, as you do your life, right, make sure that you always improve your productivity, and make sure that as your income rise, you're improving your productivity. The third lesson is don't have your debt rise faster than your income. I think this one is common sense. IBKB.
Yes, exactly.
This one is common sense. Don't see.
Let your debt burden rise faster than your income. It will eventually crush you.
Yes, your debt burden should not be on the side of what's it called. It should not be favoring your debt side. It should be favoring your income, right? Yes, it might be that yes, you're making income faster, but then even if you're going to have debt, make sure that the debt is nowhere near your income, the level of your income, because it could be deadly.
You understand? So these are principles that are not just important to policymakers, but also important to us as regular Joes going about our daily workaday lives. So these are the kind of things that are going to help us, to improve our productivity, improve our income, make better decisions along the line to help us be at a higher level financially in future. So thank you for being with us through this series. It's been a long one. I mean, it's just 3 episodes, but it's been a long one. Actually, there have been a lot to discuss, and we are glad that you shared this journey with us. So thank you for joining us, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Thank you and goodbye.
Goodbye.